Hello, everyone. Tonight, we are diving into a world where everyday objects were revolutionary, where a simple piece of paper could change an empire, and where the ingenuity of an ancient people reshaped civilization. Imagine yourself in a bustling ancient marketplace, the air thick with the scent of spices and the clatter of artisans at work. You pick up a brush, dip it in ink, and effortlessly glide it across a smooth surface, creating a masterpiece. Sounds simple, right? But you probably won't survive this without the knowledge and innovations we're about to explore. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now turn off the lights. Maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's embark on tonight's journey together. You shuffle along the dusty, ancient path, the sun beating down on your brow, a parchment scroll clutched tightly in your hand. This isn't the smooth, crisp paper you're used to. No, this is something far rougher, made from scraped animal hides or painstakingly smoothed bamboo strips. Imagine trying to write a grocery list on a piece of leather. Not exactly ideal for quick notes, is it? For centuries before the revolutionary invention of paper, people across what we now call China relied on an assortment of less than convenient materials for their written records. Bamboo was a popular choice, sliced into thin strips and then bound together to form cumbersome books. You can almost feel the weight of one of those, like trying to read a Venetian blind. Silk, too, was used for more important documents, its luxurious texture a stark contrast to the effort required to produce it. But silk was incredibly expensive, limiting its use to the wealthy elite and official decrees. Think about the sheer physical space these materials would take up. A single library filled with bamboo scrolls would be an absolute nightmare to navigate, let alone store. And imagine the fire hazard. One stray spark and poof, an entire history could vanish in a puff of smoke. Historians still debate whether the challenges of these unwieldy writing surfaces directly spurred the search for something better, or if the need for more widespread literacy was the primary driver. It's a bit like wondering if the invention of the wheel came from tired legs or the desire to move more stuff. Regardless, the limitations were clear. These materials were heavy, expensive, and didn't lend themselves to easy dissemination of knowledge. You couldn't just whip out a quick memo. You had to prepare your bamboo or silk, a process that could take days. The very act of writing was a labor-intensive affair. Carving characters into bamboo with a stylus or meticulously painting them onto silk with a delicate brush required significant skill and time. Imagine trying to jot down a quick note to yourself about needing more rice. But first, you have to go cut down a bamboo stalk, split it, smooth it, and then hope you don't mess up your inscription. It makes sending a text message feel incredibly high-tech, doesn't it? One authoritative historical fact is that the earliest known Chinese writings found on oracle bones from the Shang dynasty c. 1600–1046 BCE were divinatory inscriptions, demonstrating the profound importance of written communication, even in its most primitive forms. These weren't exactly for casual correspondence, they were for talking to the gods. A quirky fact for you: before paper, some cultures even used clay tablets, which, while durable, certainly weren't portable. Try carrying a few dozen of those in your backpack to school. Your chiropractor would love you. The stage was set then for a material that could break these barriers, a medium that was light, affordable, and readily available, paving the way for a true revolution in how information was recorded and shared. As you re-roll your imaginary bamboo scroll, grumbling about its weight, a figure emerges from the annals of history, stepping into the spotlight with a quiet dignity. This is Kai Lun Tu, an official attached to the imperial court during the Eastern Han Dynasty around 105 CE. Now, Kai Lun didn't just stumble upon paper. He refined and standardized a process that had likely been tinkered with for decades, if not centuries, before him. Think of him less as the first person to ever make a sheet of something flat and writable, and more like the Steve Jobs of ancient paper. He didn't invent the computer, but he made it user-friendly and widely accessible. Before Kylun, there were proto-papers made from hemp or bark, but they were often crude, fragile, and inconsistent in quality. It's like the difference between a child's first attempt at baking a mud pie and a gourmet chef's perfectly crafted chocolate torte. Kai Lun's genius lay in his meticulous approach and his use of a wider variety of raw materials. Imagine him experimenting in his workshop surrounded by piles of discarded mulberry bark, hemp waste, old fishing nets, and even worn-out rags. He wasn't just recycling, he was innovating. The process he perfected involved boiling and retting these fibrous materials, then pounding them into a pulp. This pulp was then mixed with water, forming a slurry. Here's where the magic really happened. This slurry was poured over a fine mesh screen, often made of bamboo strips, allowing the water to drain away, while leaving behind a thin matted layer of intertwined fibers. This wet sheet was then pressed and dried, creating a smooth, strong, and surprisingly durable sheet of paper. It's a bit like making a gigantic, super thin felt mat, only much more delicate. This invention was nothing short of revolutionary. Suddenly, there was a writing surface that was lightweight, relatively inexpensive to produce on a large scale, and far more convenient than bamboo or silk. You could write on both sides, fold it, and store it with ease. Imagine the sheer joy of a scholar or a bureaucrat finally getting their hands on a stack of this new material. No more lugging around heavy bamboo strips or worrying about ripping fragile silk. One authoritative historical fact is that the official history of the later Han Dynasty, the Ho-Han Shu, explicitly credits Kylun with improving the paper-making process in 105 CE, noting that his paper was widely adopted. This account solidifies his place as the key figure in the popularization of paper. Historians still debate whether Kylun's contribution was primarily an original invention or a significant improvement upon existing methods. It's a classic chicken or egg scenario, isn't it? Did he truly invent it from scratch? Or did he see a crude prototype and say, "Hold my fermented mulberry bark, I can do this better"? Either way, his efforts led to a standardized product that was crucial for the flourishing of Chinese bureaucracy, scholarship, and art. A quirky fact: early Chinese paper was sometimes dyed yellow, partly because yellow was considered an auspicious color, but also because it helped deter insects from munching on the precious written words. No one wants a bug-eaten history book, do they? This new, readily available medium would fundamentally transform how knowledge was accumulated, preserved, and disseminated, setting the stage for even more profound changes in the way information traveled. With Kylun's refined paper now gracing the desks of imperial scribes, you can almost hear a collective sigh of relief ripple across ancient China. No longer were officials straining their eyes over engraved bamboo or carefully unfurling delicate, expensive silk. But this revolutionary material didn't just appear everywhere overnight, like a sudden flood of discount office supplies. The spread of paper was a gradual, fascinating journey, moving outward from its Chinese heartland, like ripples in a pond. Initially, its use was concentrated within the imperial bureaucracy and scholarly circles. Think of it as a top-secret government technology that slowly, very slowly trickled down to the general populace. The secrecy surrounding its manufacture was a major factor in its slow dissemination. The Chinese meticulously guarded their paper-making techniques, much like they protected the secrets of silk production. It was an economic and strategic advantage. For centuries, anyone outside of China wanting paper either had to get it from them or figure out the process themselves, which proved incredibly difficult. Imagine trying to reverse engineer an iPhone with just a butter knife and a blurry photo. That's how hard it was. One authoritative historical fact is that for over 500 years after Kylun's improvements, China remained the sole global producer of paper, maintaining a virtual monopoly on this essential technology. This wasn't just a trade secret, it was a state secret. The first major leaps beyond China's borders occurred along the Silk Road, that ancient network of trade routes connecting East and West. Merchants, diplomats, and Buddhist monks carried paper as a valuable commodity, initially as finished goods, then eventually as knowledge. The year 751 CE marks a pivotal moment, the Battle of Talas River. During this conflict between the Abbasid Caliphate and the Tang dynasty, several Chinese papermakers were captured by the Arabs. This wasn't just a military victory, it was an intelligence coup. These captured artisans were taken to Samarkand, a city in present-day Uzbekistan, where they were compelled to reveal the secrets of papermaking. It's the ultimate how-to guide extracted under duress. From Samarkand, the knowledge of papermaking began its slow but inevitable spread westward. The Arabs, recognizing the immense value of this material for record-keeping religious texts and scholarship, quickly established their own paper mills. They even improved upon the Chinese methods, often using linen rags as a raw material, which resulted in a finer, stronger paper. You can picture it: one culture invents the pizza, and another comes along and adds pepperoni. Historians still debate the precise impact of the Battle of Talas on the timeline of paper's global spread, with some arguing that the knowledge would have eventually diffused regardless, perhaps just a few decades later. But there's no denying that the battle served as a significant catalyst. By the 10th century, paper manufacturing had reached Egypt and North Africa, and by the 12th century it arrived in Spain, introduced by the Moors. From there, it gradually made its way into Europe. A quirky fact: early European paper was sometimes made with watermarks, unique designs pressed into the paper during manufacturing, acting like ancient brand logos or security features. So next time you're holding a crisp sheet of paper, imagine its incredible journey from a handful of plant fibers in ancient China, through desert caravans across battlefields, and finally into the hands of scholars and commoners worldwide, utterly transforming the way information was stored and shared. It's quite the Cinderella story, if Cinderella was made of boiled bark and old fishing nets. You've just witnessed paper's grand tour from China to Europe, changing hands and minds along the way. But what good is all that lightweight, affordable paper if you still have to painstakingly copy every single character by hand? Imagine being tasked with duplicating 1,000 copies of a book, each letter etched by a weary scribe. It sounds like a medieval version of detention, doesn't it? This monumental task was the reality for centuries, meaning books were rare, expensive, and largely inaccessible to the masses. Knowledge remained largely confined to monasteries, imperial courts, and the very wealthy. The stage was now set for the next seismic shift in information dissemination: printing. Long before Gutenberg's movable type captured the world's imagination in the West, the Chinese had already laid the foundational concepts of block printing. This wasn't some sudden flash of inspiration. Rather, it evolved organically from existing practices. Think of it like this: people were already using seals to stamp documents and images onto clay or silk. It was a logical leap to scale that idea up from a small personal stamp to an entire page. The earliest forms of block printing involved carving an entire page of text and images onto a single block of wood. Imagine the patience required. Every character, every line, every illustration had to be carved in reverse, a mirror image of the final product. One slip of the chisel and you might have to start all over again. This method, known as woodblock printing, began to flourish during the Tang Dynasty, 618–907 CE. Buddhist monks eager to spread their scriptures were among the earliest and most enthusiastic adopters. They needed multiple copies of their sacred texts, and hand copying just wasn't cutting it. Printing offered a way to mass-produce these texts, making them more widely available to believers. It was like going from sending out individual invitations to running a full-scale advertising campaign. An authoritative historical fact: is that evidence of early woodblock printing in China dates back to at least the 7th century, with some of the earliest examples being short Buddhist incantations printed on single sheets. These weren't exactly bestsellers, but they were a start. The process itself was quite ingenious, though, labor-intensive. Once the woodblock was carved, it would be inked, and then a sheet of paper would be carefully laid over it. A printer would then use a soft brush or a baren, a padded tool, to rub the back of the paper, transferring the ink from the block to the sheet. This wasn't a press in the European sense. It was more like an elaborate rub transfer. You can picture the rhythmic sound of the rubbing, the subtle scent of ink in the air as one sheet after another emerged identical to the last. This consistency was a game changer. No more worrying about scribal errors or variations between copies. Every print was a perfect clone. Historians still debate the exact origins of woodblock printing, with some suggesting that seals and rubbings of stone inscriptions provided the initial inspiration, while others point to textile printing as a direct precursor. It's like arguing whether knitting came before weaving or vice versa. The creative human mind tends to connect dots in fascinating ways. A quirky fact: some early Chinese woodblock prints used multiple blocks to print different colors, creating surprisingly vibrant and intricate images, centuries before such techniques were common in the West. So while you might think of printing as a black and white affair from history books, imagine a splash of ancient Chinese color. This foundational step in printing technology set the stage for even more sophisticated advancements, ensuring that the written word now on paper could truly reach the masses. You've witnessed the slow spread of paper and the dawn of woodblock, printing a truly significant leap forward. Now imagine a world without books, without easy access to stories or knowledge beyond what someone could painstakingly copy by hand. That was the reality for much of history. But then a quiet revolution occurred, embodied in a single ancient text that proved the power of the printed word. We're talking about the Diamond Sutra, a Buddhist scripture that holds the undisputed title of the world's oldest dated printed book. It's not just old, it's a tangible testament to the sophisticated printing technology already thriving in China over a millennium ago. Discovered in 1907 by archaeologist Mark Aurel Stein in the Mogao Caves, near Dunhuang, a vital stop on the Silk Road, this scroll isn't merely a historical artifact, it's a masterpiece of early printing. Dated precisely to the 13th day of the 4th moon of the 9th year of the Xiantong era, which translates to May 11, 868 CE, it was printed for free distribution for the purpose of universally distributing it. Think about that for a moment. Over 1,000 years ago, someone was creating mass-produced literature for public access, an act of generosity and technological prowess combined. This wasn't a one-off experiment. It was a finished product, hinting at a mature printing industry already in place. The Diamond Sutra itself is a scroll nearly 16 feet long, composed of 7 sheets of paper, meticulously printed and joined together. The text is clear, the characters well-formed, and the illustrations at the beginning of the scroll are remarkably intricate, depicting Buddha surrounded by his disciples. It's a stunning example of the skill of the artisans who carved the woodblocks. Each page was carved onto a single block, and the precision involved in ensuring consistent alignment and clear impressions across multiple sheets is truly impressive. It makes you wonder how many practice blocks they went through to get it just right. One authoritative historical fact is that the colophon, the inscription at the end of the scroll of the Diamond Sutra, explicitly states its printing date and purpose, providing irrefutable evidence of its age and the charitable intent behind its creation. This isn't just a theory, it's written right there on the scroll itself. Historians still debate the extent to which the Diamond Sutra represents the pinnacle of Chinese woodblock printing at that time, or if even more advanced examples simply haven't survived. Was this the best of the best, or merely a very good example of widespread practice? It's a bit like finding a perfectly preserved 1980s video game console and wondering if there were even more advanced prototypes that simply biodegraded. The discovery of the Diamond Sutra fundamentally shifted the Western understanding of printing history, proving that sophisticated printing existed in China centuries before Gutenberg's movable type revolutionized Europe. It's a prime example of how much of the world's technological progress originated in the East. A quirky fact: the Mogao caves, where the Diamond Sutra was found, contain tens of thousands of manuscripts, paintings, and artifacts that had been sealed away for 1,000 years, acting as a veritable time capsule of Silk Road culture. So this isn't just about a book, it's about a treasure trove that revealed so much more. The Diamond Sutra isn't just a relic, it's a testament to ancient ingenuity, a physical representation of knowledge being disseminated on a scale previously unimaginable, pushing the boundaries of what was possible with the written word. You've seen the impressive clarity and length of the Diamond Sutra, a testament to woodblock printing. But imagine you're a busy editor in ancient China, and you suddenly realize you need to change a single character in a book you're printing. With woodblock printing, that meant carving an entirely new block for that page, a task as appealing as rewriting an entire essay for one typo. It was clear that while block printing was revolutionary for fixed texts, it wasn't very flexible. The need for a more adaptable system became apparent, especially as the demand for diverse texts grew. Enter Bisheng Yisag, a commoner from the Northern Song dynasty, 960 to 1127 CE, whose brilliance would forever change the landscape of printing. Around 1040 CE, Bisheng developed the world's first known movable types printing system. Forget carving entire pages. Bisheng thought, why not carve individual characters? It's the ultimate modular design, like building with Legos instead of sculpting a single giant block. His innovation wasn't just a clever idea, it was a practical solution to the inherent limitations of woodblock printing, especially for languages with vast numbers of characters like Chinese. Bai Sheng's method involved carving individual characters onto small pieces of clay. These clay types were then hardened by baking. Imagine hundreds, perhaps thousands of tiny ceramic tiles, each bearing a single Chinese character. When a printer wanted to compose a page, they would arrange these individual types in a frame made of iron set onto an iron plate. To hold the characters in place, they would apply a mixture of resin wax and paper ashes to the plate. Once the characters were arranged, the plate would be gently heated, melting the mixture. The types would then be pressed down, ensuring they were perfectly level. As the mixture cooled, it hardened, locking the characters firmly in place, ready for inking and printing. When the print run was complete, the plate could be reheated, the types dislodged, cleaned, and stored for future use. It's like a reusable ancient printing press. One authoritative historical fact is that Bi Sheng's invention of movable type is well documented in the Dream Pool essays, Mengshi Bitan, written by the Song dynasty scientist and statesman Shen Kuo in 1088. Shen Kuo not only described the process but also commented on its practicality and efficiency. This primary source account gives us a remarkable window into Bi Sheng's genius. Historians still debate the practical adoption rates of Bai Sheng's ceramic movable type system, with some scholars arguing that its fragility and the sheer number of characters in Chinese script made woodblock printing remain more prevalent for large-scale projects. It's a bit like wondering if everyone immediately switched to smartphones, or if flip phones still had their niche for a while. Despite potential challenges, the underlying concept was revolutionary. Bai Sheng's invention laid the groundwork for future developments in movable type, influencing later innovations in China and beyond. A quirky fact: because Chinese characters are not alphabetical, organizing and retrieving the vast number of individual types was a significant logistical challenge. Printers would often organize them by rhymes categories, or even by the number of strokes in each character, creating elaborate filing systems that would make a modern librarian weep with joy or despair. So, while you might take your alphabet for granted, imagine sifting through thousands of unique character tiles just to find the right one. Bi Sheng's movable type was a brilliant solution that, while perhaps not immediately displacing woodblock printing, undeniably set the intellectual stage for the next great leap in widespread literacy and the sharing of human knowledge. You've witnessed the transformation of writing from bamboo to paper, and then the revolutionary leap from hand copying to woodblock, and finally to movable type. Now let's shift our gaze from the dusty scrolls and printing blocks to something far more tactile, something you might even have in your kitchen cabinet right now: porcelain. Imagine a world where everyday dishes were clumsy, porous, and often prone to breaking. Then imagine encountering a material so refined, so translucent, and so strong that it seemed almost magical. That's the feeling early Chinese porcelain must have evoked. The story of Chinese ceramics is a long, winding narrative stretching back millennia. Long before the dazzling white porcelain, we know the Chinese were masters of pottery. From simple utilitarian earthenware to beautifully glazed stoneware, their skills evolved steadily. Early pottery dates back to Neolithic times, where simple clay vessels were hand-formed and fired at relatively low temperatures. You can almost feel the rough texture of these early pots, essential for storing grain or water. Over time, techniques improved, glazes were introduced, and kilns became more sophisticated, allowing for higher firing temperatures and more durable wares. It's like going from a basic mud pie to a perfectly baked clay pot you might see at a farmer's market. The true leap towards porcelain began during the Tang Dynasty, 618–907 CE, though early forms of proto-porcelain existed even before then. The key was the specific type of clay, kaolin, and the incredibly high firing temperatures, often exceeding 1200 degrees Celsius, 2192 degrees Fahrenheit. These extreme temperatures vitrified the clay, making it non-porous, incredibly hard, and, in its purest form, beautifully translucent. One authoritative historical fact is that true porcelain, characterized by its whiteness, translucence, and resonant quality, was developed in China during the Tang Dynasty, cementing its place as the birthplace of this refined ceramic. It wasn't just pretty, it was incredibly practical. Imagine the skill required to control kilns at such blistering temperatures, especially in an era before modern thermometers. Potters had to rely on their intuition, the color of the flames, and the subtle sounds within the kiln to know when the firing was just right. It was a blend of science, art, and a touch of alchemy. Historians still debate the precise moment and location of porcelain's invention, with some arguing for an earlier Song Dynasty development of what we recognize as classic porcelain while acknowledging the Tang roots. It's like discussing when a language officially became modern. There's rarely a single neat date. The beauty of Chinese porcelain, particularly the iconic blue and white wares of the Ming and Qing dynasties, would eventually captivate the entire world. These delicate yet durable pieces became highly sought-after commodities along the Silk Road and maritime trade routes, transforming global aesthetics and dining habits. Imagine European royalty accustomed to heavy metal or crude earthenware, seeing these exquisite, almost ethereal pieces for the first time. It must have felt like magic. A quirky fact: early Chinese emperors sometimes kept broken porcelain as treasured artifacts, believing the imperfections added character, or because the pieces were so rare and valuable that even fragments were cherished. So don't feel bad about that chipped mug. It's got character, from simple clay pots to the refined white gold that fascinated continents. Chinese ceramicists continued to push the boundaries of what was possible with earth and fire. You've explored the delicate artistry of porcelain. Now let's shift gears dramatically from the exquisite to the enormous. Imagine an ancient world grappling with the immense challenge of moving goods and people across vast distances, often against the unforgiving whims of nature. Rivers might flow in the wrong direction or not exist where they were needed most. This was the problem that spurred the creation of one of the most astonishing engineering feats of the ancient world: the Grand Canal. It wasn't just a ditch. It was a liquid highway connecting disparate regions and forever altering the economic and political landscape of China. The Grand Canal isn't a single project built by one person at one time, but rather a colossal network of waterways constructed over many centuries, beginning as early as the 5th century BCE. However, its true expansion into a unified, massive transportation artery primarily occurred during the Sui dynasty 581–618 CE under Emperor Yang. Imagine the sheer ambition of a ruler who decides to connect major rivers flowing in different directions, allowing seamless travel from the fertile south to the political centers in the north. It's like deciding to build a highway from New York to Los Angeles using only shovels and human muscle. The scale of this undertaking was immense. Millions of laborers, both conscripted peasants and soldiers, were put to work enduring brutal conditions. Many perished from exhaustion, disease, or accidents during its construction. You can almost hear the rhythmic chanting of the workers, the splash of mud, and the distant shouts of overseers. This wasn't just about digging. It involved complex engineering challenges, including developing sophisticated lock systems to manage varying water levels and navigating treacherous terrain. One authoritative historical fact is that at its peak, the Grand Canal stretched for over 1,176 kilometers, about 100 miles, making it the longest artificial river in the world, connecting 5 major river basins. That's longer than the distance from London to Rome. The primary purpose of the Grand Canal was to facilitate the transportation of grain from the agriculturally rich Yangtze River Delta in the south to the northern capitals and frontier garrisons. Without it, feeding a massive empire would have been a logistical nightmare, relying on slower, less efficient land routes or unpredictable sea voyages. It transformed China into a truly integrated economic entity, allowing goods, troops, and ideas to flow with unprecedented speed. Historians still debate the precise socio-economic cost of the Grand Canal's construction during the Sui dynasty, with some arguing that the immense human toll and resource drain contributed significantly to the dynasty's downfall, while others emphasize its long-term benefits to subsequent dynasties. It's a classic case of short-term pain versus long-term gain played out on an epic scale. A quirky fact: some sections of the Grand Canal were wide enough for multiple boats to pass abreast, creating ancient multi-lane freeways of water. Imagine the bustling traffic jams of barges laden with grain, silk, and pottery, all moving efficiently thanks to this ingenious system. This wasn't just infrastructure, it was the circulatory system of a burgeoning empire. The Grand Canal stands as a monumental testament to ancient Chinese engineering prowess, a waterway that not only moved mountains of goods, but also shaped the very fabric of Chinese society for over 1,000 years. It's a watery ribbon that tied an entire nation together. You've navigated the vastness of the Grand Canal, a testament to raw human power and engineering ingenuity. Now let's pivot from massive infrastructure to something much smaller yet equally revolutionary in its impact: the compass. Imagine being adrift on a vast featureless ocean or lost in a dense trackless forest with no stars visible and no familiar landmarks. The feeling of utter disorientation would be overwhelming, wouldn't it? For millennia, humanity relied on celestial bodies, wind patterns, and instinct for navigation. But ancient China developed a tool that offered an unshakable, always present guide, forever changing how people explored their world. The earliest Chinese compasses weren't the neat, pocket-sized devices you might envision. They evolved from ancient divination practices, specifically geomancy, which sought to harmonize human dwellings with natural forces. These initial south-pointing spoons were made of lodestone, a naturally magnetized iron ore. Imagine a polished bronze plate with directional markings and a carefully balanced spoon-shaped lodestone resting on it, its handle always pointing south. It wasn't about finding your way to the grocery store. It was about aligning your house with good feng shui. One authoritative historical fact is that the earliest known Chinese references to magnetized objects pointing south date back to the Warring States period 475 to 21 BCE, predating European use by over a millennium. The transition from a geomantic tool to a navigational instrument was gradual, spurred by the demands of land travel and eventually sea voyages. By the Song Dynasty 960–1279 CE, mariners were actively using magnetic compasses for navigation. Imagine a merchant ship far out at sea, caught in a fog, unable to see the sun or stars. Before the compass, they were effectively blind, relying on dead reckoning and hope. With the compass, they had a constant, reliable reference point, a silent sentinel always pointing to the south or later north as the convention shifted. This simple device allowed for more precise course plotting, longer voyages away from coastlines, and a dramatic reduction in the risk of getting truly lost. It was like getting GPS for your ancient boat. The Chinese developed several forms of magnetic compasses, including floating compasses, where a magnetized needle was suspended in water, and later dry pivot compasses similar to modern designs. Historians still debate whether the primary impetus for the compass's development was practical navigation or its initial use in divination, with some arguing that its spiritual significance gave it the necessary research and development budget to become useful. It's like asking if the internet was invented for cat videos or for academic research. Sometimes the unintended uses become the most widespread. A quirky fact: some early Chinese compasses for divination also included concentric circles, with complex astrological and calendrical symbols, turning them into miniature universes of cosmic knowledge. So it wasn't just about direction, it was about understanding your place in the cosmos. The compass, often referred to as one of the four great inventions of ancient China, transformed exploration, trade, and even warfare. It allowed cultures to connect across vast distances, enabling a true age of discovery centuries before European explorers embarked on their global expeditions. This tiny, seemingly simple invention literally changed the direction of human history, pointing the way to a more interconnected world. You've just been guided by the silent, steady hand of the compass. Now prepare for an invention that was anything but silent and anything but peaceful in its origins. Imagine a group of ancient alchemists toiling away in a dimly lit laboratory, driven by the tantalizing dream of eternal life. They weren't trying to invent a weapon, they were trying to brew an elixir of immortality. What they accidentally stumbled upon, however, was something far more explosive: gunpowder. It's the ultimate oops moment in history, a scientific miscalculation that would change warfare, fireworks, and festivals forever. The accidental birth of gunpowder occurred in China sometime during the Tang Dynasty, 618–907 CE. Taoist alchemists obsessed with finding the secret to everlasting life and transmuting base metals into gold were experimenting with various mineral compounds. They mixed sulfur charcoal and potassium nitrate saltpeter, common ingredients, for medicinal or alchemical concoctions. Now, any modern chemist would immediately see the warning signs, but these ancient experimenters were blazing a new trail, often with painful, explosive results. Imagine the surprise, the frantic scrambling when a mixture suddenly ignited, perhaps with a flash and a bang, instead of bubbling into a magical potion. One authoritative historical fact is that the earliest undisputed textual reference to gunpowder appears in a Tang Dynasty text, Zhengyuan Xinyao, Essential Secrets of the Tao of the True Origin, describing a mixture of saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal that caused a flaming and leaping effect when ignited. The initial formulations of gunpowder weren't immediately recognized for their military potential. They were more akin to incendiary agents used in rudimentary flamethrowers or smoke bombs to disorient enemies. Think less boom and more whoosh or poof. The alchemists, probably still more interested in their immortality elixirs, might have noted the destructive power, but perhaps filed it away under failed experiment dangerous side effects. Historians still debate the precise alchemical tradition or specific group of practitioners responsible for the first accidental ignition of gunpowder, with some theories suggesting Buddhist monks were also involved in early experimentation. It's a bit like trying to pinpoint the exact person who first dropped bread in a toaster. Someone did it, but the details are fuzzy. As word of this volatile substance spread, its applications began to evolve. The military quickly realized that this fire drug had far more destructive potential than just setting things alight. Imagine generals seeing the chaos and fear caused by a sudden burst of flame and smoke on the battlefield. From relatively harmless entertainment to terrifying weapon, the trajectory of gunpowder would be a swift and impactful one. A quirky fact: early alchemists sometimes referred to saltpeter as snow of the earth or water of fire, which sounds rather poetic for something that would become so destructive. The transition from an accidental discovery to a deliberate weapon was critical. It began with fire arrows, ordinary arrows with small packets of gunpowder attached, turning them into primitive incendiary projectiles. Then came the thunderclap bomb, a casing filled with gunpowder thrown by hand or trebuchet. This wasn't just about killing, it was about psychological warfare, about creating noise and panic. The alchemist's pursuit of eternal life inadvertently gave humanity a tool that dramatically shortened it for countless others, setting the stage for an entirely new era of warfare and, somewhat ironically, incredible celebration. You've witnessed the explosive birth of gunpowder, a substance born from alchemical dreams and accidental discoveries. Now let's explore how this volatile compound quickly transitioned from a curious experiment into tools of both destruction and delight. Imagine the surprise and fear when ancient warriors first encountered weapons that didn't rely on muscle or sharp edges, but on a sudden, powerful burst of controlled explosion. This transition from fire drug to true weaponry and celebratory spectacle happened remarkably quickly in China. The military applications of gunpowder began modestly evolving from simple incendiary devices to more sophisticated projectiles. Early on, gunpowder was packed into bamboo tubes and attached to arrows, creating what were known as fire arrows. These weren't designed to be terribly accurate, but imagine a volley of arrows raining down on an enemy trailing smoke, and sparks perhaps setting fire to their wooden siege towers or causing panic among cavalry. It was an early form of psychological warfare, more about shock and awe than direct lethality. One authoritative historical fact is that the earliest undisputed pictorial evidence of fire arrows comes from the Mogao caves in Dunhuang, dating to the 10th century, showing soldiers using them in battle. But the Chinese didn't stop there. By the Song Dynasty 960–1279 CE, they had developed more advanced gunpowder weapons. This included the thunderclap bomb, a cast-iron casing filled with gunpowder designed to explode upon impact or ignition, scattering shrapnel and creating a terrifying noise. Imagine being on a battlefield and suddenly hearing a deafening roar followed by metal fragments whistling through the air. It was a terrifying experience far beyond anything conventional weaponry could achieve. Then came the true game changer, the first true rockets. Initially, rockets were simply fire arrows without the bow. Gunpowder was packed into a tube, and when ignited, the rapidly expanding gases propelled the tube forward. These were not the precision-guided missiles of today. They were more like glorified fireworks pointed at the enemy. But they were a formidable sight and sound. Imagine the chaos of hundreds of these whistling projectiles streaking across the sky towards your position. Historians still debate the precise development timeline from fire arrows to true self-propelled rockets, with some arguing for a more continuous evolution, driven by iterative military necessity rather than sudden breakthroughs. It's like arguing whether a car evolved from a horse-drawn carriage or was a totally new invention. Often it's a bit of both. Simultaneously, gunpowder found a less destructive but equally spectacular application: fireworks. The same explosive properties that created terrifying weapons could be harnessed for stunning visual displays. It's a classic case of beating swords into plowshares, or rather into glittering aerial explosions. Early fireworks were used for celebrations, religious ceremonies, and to ward off evil spirits. Imagine the delight and wonder of a crowd witnessing colorful explosions against the night sky for the very first time. A quirky fact: some ancient Chinese fireworks were designed to mimic the sounds of various animals or produce intricate patterns in the air long before modern pyrotechnic chemicals allowed for a wide spectrum of colors. From terrifying battlefield instruments to dazzling displays of light and sound, gunpowder's dual nature quickly became apparent. It transformed warfare by introducing explosive power and projection, and it transformed celebrations into vibrant, memorable spectacles. The accidental discovery of some alchemists had truly given birth to an invention that would shape the future of conflict and merriment for centuries to come. You've witnessed the thunderous impact of gunpowder and the dazzling beauty of fireworks. Now let's travel back to a quieter, more ancient innovation, one that dressed emperors and empresses, fueled global trade, and became a symbol of luxury and exoticism for millennia: silk. Imagine a tiny, unassuming worm munching on mulberry leaves, silently producing a filament that would literally weave itself into the fabric of human history. The story of silk production is one of closely guarded secrets, meticulous craftsmanship, and an enduring allure that spanned continents. The origins of silk production are shrouded in myth and legend, but archaeological evidence points to its beginnings in China as early as 6000 BCE. According to Chinese legend, Empress Leizu, wife of the Yellow Emperor, discovered silk around 2700 BCE when a silkworm cocoon fell into her teacup. As she retrieved it, a delicate thread unwound, sparking the idea of weaving. Whether myth or reality, it highlights the profound cultural significance silk held from its very inception. You can almost picture her, a regal figure with a curious glint in her eye, pulling that first magical strand. The process of cultivating silkworms and processing their cocoons into lustrous thread is remarkably intricate and labor-intensive. It begins with the silkworms, Bombyx mori, being fed exclusively on mulberry leaves. They grow rapidly, molting several times before spinning their cocoons from a single continuous strand of silk. Once the cocoons are formed, they are carefully harvested before the moth emerges, which would break the precious thread. The cocoons are then softened in hot water, a delicate process that allows the silk filament to be unwound without breaking. This reeled silk is then twisted into threads, which can be dyed and woven into magnificent fabrics. One authoritative historical fact is that China maintained a strict monopoly on silk production for nearly 3,000 years, making the Silk Road aptly named for its most prized commodity. This wasn't just a simple craft. It was a highly sophisticated industry, with every step from mulberry cultivation to weaving requiring specialized knowledge and skill. Imagine the meticulous care needed to raise millions of silkworms, the patience required to unwind threads as fine as spiderwebs, and the artistic talent to weave them into intricate patterns. Historians still debate the exact routes and methods by which silk production eventually escaped China, with theories ranging from spies smuggling silkworm eggs in hollow walking sticks to Buddhist monks concealing them in their staffs. It's like a real-life ancient spy thriller, complete with corporate espionage on a global scale. The value of silk was immense. It wasn't just clothing. It was currency, diplomatic gifts, and a symbol of wealth and status. Imagine a Roman emperor receiving a gift of shimmering Chinese silk. It would have been more precious than gold. This demand fueled the legendary Silk Road, a network of trade routes that connected East and West, facilitating not only the exchange of goods, but also ideas, technologies, and cultures. A quirky fact, because the silkworm moth cannot fly and is completely dependent on humans for survival, it is considered one of the most domesticated animals in the world. They literally cannot exist without us, which is a rather sweet, albeit parasitic relationship. From a humble worm's delicate creation to a global commodity that shaped empires, and trade silk production stands as a testament to ancient Chinese ingenuity, meticulous attention to detail, and their ability to keep a secret for a very, very long time. You've unwound the secrets of silk, a testament to nature's small wonders and human ingenuity. Now let's explore an art form that transformed humble wood and common household items into objects of breathtaking beauty and incredible durability. Lacquerware. Imagine a simple wooden bowl, perhaps a bit rough and unassuming. Then, picture it transformed layer by painstaking layer into a glossy, lustrous surface, often adorned with intricate designs inlaid with gold or mother of pearl and boasting a finish so deep it seems to hold light within its very depths. This is the magic of Chinese lacquer. The history of lacquerware in China stretches back millennia, with archaeological finds dating back to the Neolithic period around 8,000 years ago. Early lacquer was likely discovered accidentally, perhaps, when the sap of the lacquer tree, Rus verniciflua, dripped onto a surface and hardened into a resilient waterproof coating. Imagine someone noticing this sticky resinous sap drying to a tough shiny film. A bit like discovering that tree sap can also act as superglue, but way more elegant. Over time, this natural phenomenon was harnessed and refined into a sophisticated art. The process of creating true Chinese lacquerware is incredibly labor-intensive and time-consuming, often taking months or even years for a single piece. It involves applying dozens, sometimes hundreds of thin layers of refined lacquer sap to a base material, typically wood, bamboo, or even cloth. Each layer must be allowed to dry completely in a humid environment before the next is applied, a process that can take days. The humidity is crucial for the lacquer to harden properly, transforming from a sticky liquid into a durable, glassy polymer. If you've ever watched paint dry, this is that, but on an extreme level of patience. One authoritative historical fact is that the earliest known refined lacquer objects in China date to the Hemudu culture, EC 5000, 4500 BC, demonstrating its ancient roots and long tradition. Once the layers are built up, the surface can be polished to an incredible sheen, or it can be carved to create intricate designs revealing different colored layers beneath. Artisans also perfected techniques like inlaying with gold dust silver foil or iridescent pieces of mother of pearl, creating stunning visual effects that catch the light. Imagine the delicate touch required to carve through multiple layers without error, or to precisely place tiny fragments of shell into a still wet surface. Historians still debate whether the primary driving force behind the development of such complex lacquer techniques was purely aesthetic, or if its protective waterproof qualities were the initial allure. Was it beauty first or practicality? Likely a harmonious blend of both. The beauty and durability of Chinese lacquerware made it highly prized. It was used for everything from utilitarian bowls and boxes to elaborate furniture, musical instruments, and ceremonial objects for the imperial court. It not only preserved the underlying material, but also elevated its status to an art form. A quirky fact: the sap of the lacquer tree contains urushiol, the same irritant found in poison ivy. Ancient lacquer artisans often suffered from severe rashes during their work, enduring discomfort for the sake of their art. It's truly a craft born of dedication and perhaps a bit of itching. From practical coatings to objects of exquisite art, Chinese lacquerware represents a deep understanding of natural materials and an unwavering commitment to beauty and craftsmanship, creating timeless pieces that still shine with an ancient glow. You've appreciated the painstaking artistry of lacquerware, a testament to beauty, born from patience. Now, let's turn our attention from the deliberate creations of human hands to the unpredictable, often terrifying forces of nature. Imagine the ground beneath you suddenly rumbling, the walls shaking, and the very earth seeming to groan. Earthquakes, powerful and devastating, have plagued humanity for millennia. Yet in ancient China, a brilliant mind devised a way to detect these hidden tremors long before they were felt, offering a whisper of warning against a silent killer. This brings us to the ingenious seismoscope, invented by Zhang Heng. Shang Heng, a polymath of the Eastern Han Dynasty, 78 to 139 CE, was much more than just an inventor. He was an astronomer, mathematician, engineer, geographer, cartographer, artist, and poet. He was the kind of person who makes you feel slightly unproductive by comparison. Around 132 CE, Zhang Heng unveiled his masterpiece, an ornate bronze vessel that could detect earthquakes hundreds of miles away. This wasn't just a party trick. It was a sophisticated scientific instrument designed to understand and mitigate the effects of seismic activity long before anyone in the West even conceived of such a device. Imagine this magnificent bronze urn, roughly 6 feet in diameter, adorned with 8 dragon heads, each clutching a bronze ball in its mouth. Below each dragon sat a bronze toad mouth, agape. The magic happened inside a delicate pendulum system was connected to a series of levers. When an earthquake occurred, even a distant one, the slight tremor would cause the pendulum to swing. This subtle movement would activate a lever, causing one of the dragon heads to release its bronze ball, which would then fall into the mouth of the toad directly below it. The direction of the falling ball indicated the direction of the earthquake's epicenter. It's an intricate chain reaction, a mechanical detective announcing seismic events. One authoritative historical fact is that historical records, specifically the Book of Later Han, describe Zhang Heng's seismoscope and even recount an instance in 138 CE when it indicated an earthquake in Longxi, modern-day Gansu province, which was only confirmed days later when a messenger arrived with news of the disaster. This account, though debated for its exact veracity, underscores the device's potential and the prevailing belief in its efficacy. Historians still debate the precise internal mechanisms of Zhang Heng's seismoscope, as no original model has survived. Modern reconstructions vary, each trying to reconcile the historical descriptions with plausible mechanical engineering, making it a bit of an ancient puzzle box. The primary purpose of the seismoscope was not to predict earthquakes. That level of understanding was still millennia away. But to detect them, especially distant ones, allowing the emperor to dispatch aid to affected areas more quickly. It was an early warning system, a way to show compassion and control in the face of natural disaster. A quirky fact, Zhang Heng also invented a sophisticated armillary sphere, a celestial globe powered by water that accurately depicted the movement of heavenly bodies, showing his profound understanding of both earthly and cosmic mechanics. So he wasn't just shaking things up on the ground. He was charting the stars above. Zhang Heng's seismoscope remains a stunning example of ancient Chinese scientific genius, demonstrating an early understanding of seismic waves and the power of precision engineering to listen to the Earth's whispers. You've felt the ground rumble with Zhang Heng's ingenious seismoscope. Now let's immerse ourselves in the clang of metal and the whiz of projectiles as we explore ancient China's remarkable advancements in weaponry and warfare. Imagine a battlefield where brute force and close combat were the norm. Then picture the introduction of devices that could launch projectiles with devastating power or deliver accurate shots from a distance, changing the very calculus of conflict. China was a crucible of military innovation consistently pushing the boundaries of what was possible in war. The crossbow is a prime example of this ingenuity. While simple bows had existed for millennia, the crossbow introduced a mechanical advantage that revolutionized archery. Instead of relying solely on the archer's strength to hold the string taut, the crossbow featured a locking mechanism that held the bowstring back, allowing the user to take aim and release with a trigger. This meant that less trained soldiers could wield a powerful weapon, and experienced archers could achieve greater accuracy and sustained firepower. Imagine a regular bow versus a fully loaded crossbow. It's like comparing a simple slingshot to a sophisticated sniper rifle in terms of ease of use and impact. One authoritative historical fact is that archaeological evidence from China suggests the use of sophisticated bronze crossbow triggers as early as the 4th century BCE, demonstrating their early and widespread adoption. The Chinese didn't just invent the crossbow, they refined it. They developed repeating crossbows capable of firing multiple bolts in quick succession, turning a single archer into a formidable rapid-fire threat. They also created larger mounted crossbows, essentially giant artillery pieces, capable of launching massive bolts or even bundles of arrows over long distances, making them effective against fortifications. Historians still debate the exact impact of repeating crossbows on ancient battlefield tactics, with some arguing their logistical complexity often limited their widespread practical use, while others emphasize their psychological effect and rapid volley potential. It's like discussing whether a super-fast but finicky machine gun always beat a simpler, more reliable rifle. Beyond personal weaponry, Chinese engineers also developed a terrifying array of siege engines. These were monumental machines designed to breach the formidable walls of fortified cities. Imagine towering siege towers covered in hide to protect against fire, slowly rolling towards city walls, allowing attackers to scale directly onto the ramparts. Or consider massive trebuchets and catapults, capable of hurling immense stones, incendiary bombs, thank you gunpowder, or even diseased corpses, over city defenses. Yes, ancient germ warfare was definitely a thing. You can almost hear the groaning timber and the thud of massive stones hitting stone. The meticulous design and construction of these machines required a deep understanding of mechanics, leverage, and ballistics. Chinese engineers documented their designs in detail, ensuring that successful innovations could be replicated and improved upon. A quirky fact: some Chinese siege engines were designed to launch multiple projectiles, simultaneously creating a truly overwhelming barrage on enemy positions. Imagine a cluster bomb but powered by ropes and counterweights. These inventions weren't just about destruction, they were about strategy, about overcoming defenses, and about projecting power. From the precise click of a crossbow trigger to the creaking advance of a siege tower, ancient Chinese military technology was constantly innovating, shaping the very nature of conflict, and proving that sometimes the sharpest minds were found on the battlefield. You've witnessed the destructive power of ancient Chinese warfare, but now let's shift our focus to an equally vital, albeit far less dramatic battle: the one against hunger. Imagine a vast growing population reliant on the unpredictable bounty of the land. For societies to thrive or even just survive, agricultural innovations are absolutely essential, and in ancient China, feeding millions became an art form driven by ingenious tools and techniques that maximized every inch of arable land. It's not as flashy as a crossbow, but far more fundamental to civilization. From the earliest dynasties, Chinese farmers faced the challenge of cultivating diverse landscapes, from the fertile plains of the Yellow River to the terraced hillsides of the south. Their solutions were pragmatic, effective, and often centuries ahead of their time. One of the most significant advancements was the development of the iron plow. While simple plows existed elsewhere, the Chinese refined them, creating designs that were more efficient and adaptable to different soil types. They invented the moldboard plow, which not only cut into the soil, but also turned it over, creating furrows that were much better for planting. Imagine trying to dig a garden by hand versus using a modern plow. It's that kind of leap in efficiency. One authoritative historical fact is that the cast iron moldboard plow was fully developed in China by the Han Dynasty 206 BCE. 220 CE, significantly enhancing agricultural productivity. Beyond the plow, the Chinese developed a host of other specialized farming tools. They created seed drills which allowed farmers to plant seeds in precise rows at uniform depths, leading to better germination rates and more efficient use of seeds. Before this, broadcasting seeds by hand was common, leading to uneven growth and wasted resources. It's the difference between haphazardly throwing darts at a board and carefully aiming for the bullseye. They also perfected complex irrigation systems, including foot-powered chain pumps and square pallet chain pumps, which allowed water to be lifted from lower sources to irrigate higher fields. Imagine the rhythmic creak and splash of these devices tirelessly watering crops. But innovation wasn't just about tools, it was also about techniques. The Chinese were pioneers in crop rotation, understanding that rotating different crops could maintain soil fertility and reduce pests. They also practiced intensive cultivation, making the most of every available plot of land through careful fertilization and multi-cropping planting, several crops in the same field at different times. Historians still debate the extent to which these sophisticated agricultural practices were widely adopted across all regions of China, with some scholars suggesting regional variations in application and success. It's like wondering if every modern farm uses the latest tech, or if some stick to more traditional methods. A quirky fact: Chinese farmers were among the first to use natural pest control, including encouraging ants to nest in citrus orchards to prey on harmful insects. Imagine farmers carefully collecting ant nests and relocating them to protect their crops, an early form of biological warfare against pests. This symbiotic relationship between humans and insects for the sake of agriculture shows a deep understanding of natural ecosystems. From the development of sophisticated plows to advanced irrigation and sustainable farming practices, ancient Chinese agricultural innovations ensured that the vast population was fed, allowing society to flourish and supporting all the other grand inventions we've explored. It truly was the bedrock upon which an empire was built. You've seen how ancient China fed its millions through agricultural brilliance. Now let's delve into the fiery heart of another essential industry: iron and steel metallurgy. Imagine a world where metal tools were rare, brittle, or simply too soft for serious work. Then picture the transformation wrought by mastering fire and ore, producing materials strong enough to build bridges, forge powerful weapons, and create durable, everyday implements. Ancient China was a powerhouse of metallurgical innovation, consistently pushing the boundaries of what was possible, with iron and steel centuries before similar advancements in the West. The Chinese had a long history of working with metals, starting with bronze, but it was their mastery of iron that truly set them apart. While early iron production in many parts of the world involved wrought iron, malleable but softer, the Chinese developed sophisticated techniques for producing cast iron as early as the 6th century BCE. Cast iron is made by heating iron ore to a much higher temperature, around 1200 degrees Celsius or 2200 degrees Fahrenheit, until it becomes molten. This liquid iron can then be poured into molds, allowing for the mass production of complex shapes like tools, agricultural implements, and even cooking vessels. Imagine being able to mass-produce sturdy iron plowshares instead of painstakingly hammering them out one by one. One authoritative historical fact is that China was producing cast iron on a large scale by the Warring States period, 475 221 BCE, long before Europe saw similar widespread adoption, which only occurred in the late Middle Ages. But cast iron, while useful for many applications, is brittle. The real breakthrough came with the ability to produce steel, an alloy of iron and carbon that is much stronger and more flexible than cast iron or wrought iron. The Chinese pioneered several methods for steel production. One notable technique was the co-fusion process, where cast iron and wrought iron were melted together in a crucible, allowing the carbon from the cast iron to diffuse into the wrought iron, creating a uniform steel. Another method involved repeated heating, hammering, and folding of iron, a process known as pattern welding, or hundred refining, which removed impurities and created incredibly strong and sharp blades like those of the legendary Chinese swords. Imagine the sheer physical labor and precise temperature control required for these processes, often performed in blast furnaces that could reach astonishingly high temperatures for their time. The roar of the bellows, the blinding glare of molten metal, the rhythmic clang of hammers on anvils. It was a symphony of industrial might. Historians still debate the extent to which these advanced steel-making techniques were fully understood as scientific processes versus empirical trial and error refinements. It's like wondering if a brilliant chef truly understands the chemistry of every ingredient or just instinctively knows what works. The impact of these metallurgical advancements was profound. Stronger iron tools meant more efficient farming and construction. Durable steel weapons provided a significant military advantage. Bridges could be built with iron components, and everyday life was made easier by a proliferation of robust metal goods. A quirky fact: some ancient Chinese swords were so precisely crafted that they could be bent into a U shape without breaking and would spring back perfectly straight. Try doing that with your kitchen knife. From the humble plowshare to the legendary sword, Chinese iron and steel technology forged the backbone of an empire, proving that sometimes true power lies in the strength of your materials. You've delved into the fiery heart of ancient Chinese metallurgy, where molten metal was forged into tools of strength and precision. Now let's move to a simpler yet profoundly impactful invention that revolutionized everyday transport and labor: the wheelbarrow. Imagine a world where every heavy load, every bag of grain, every stone for construction had to be carried on someone's back or dragged by a team of animals. The sheer inefficiency would be crippling, wouldn't it? Then picture a single individual effortlessly moving a load many times their own weight, all thanks to a humble, elegant device. This is the enduring legacy of the Chinese wheelbarrow. While the concept of a wheel and an axle is ancient, the single-wheeled wheelbarrow, as we largely know it today, is widely credited as a Chinese invention, appearing as early as the 1st century CE during the Han Dynasty. Before this, you might have seen two-wheeled carts, which are fine on flat, wide roads, but become incredibly unstable and difficult to maneuver on narrow paths, uneven terrain, or in crowded marketplaces. The genius of the single-wheel design lies in its central placement. The wheel is positioned directly beneath the load, bearing the majority of the weight. This transfers the burden from the operator's back to the wheel, allowing one person to move significantly heavier loads with much less effort. It's like discovering that instead of deadlifting a boulder, you can just gently push it. The earliest depictions and descriptions of Chinese wheelbarrows often show them with the wheel positioned centrally, sometimes even featuring sails to harness the wind and assist with propulsion. Imagine a farmer effortlessly pushing a massive load of produce with a little sail catching the breeze, adding to the almost magical ease of movement. It's a charming image of ancient efficiency. One authoritative historical fact is that the inventor of the wheelbarrow is generally attributed to Prime Minister Zhuge Liang of the Shu Han Kingdom, Three Kingdoms period, 220–280 CE, who called it the wooden ox, or gliding horse, and initially used it for military logistics to transport provisions. This military origin highlights its efficiency for serious tasks. The impact of the wheelbarrow on ancient Chinese society was multifaceted. In agriculture, it meant farmers could transport larger harvests from fields to storage or move manure for fertilization with less manual labor. In construction, it greatly simplified the movement of building materials, contributing to the speed and scale of impressive architectural projects from city walls to temples. In daily life, it made market trips easier for merchants and enabled the transport of goods for trade. Historians still debate the precise evolution of the wheelbarrow from a possible earlier two-wheeled or different single-wheeled device, with some arguing for its gradual development rather than a single inventor. It's like arguing whether the first smartphone was truly the first or just the best iteration of something that came before. A quirky fact: early Chinese wheelbarrows were sometimes designed with two handles extending forward, allowing two people to push or pull together for even heavier loads, transforming a solitary effort into a team one. So it wasn't just a one-person show. The Chinese wheelbarrow, seemingly simple, was a powerful force multiplier, enhancing human labor and contributing significantly to the economic development and logistical capabilities of ancient China. It proved that sometimes the most revolutionary inventions are those that simply make life easier for the everyday person, one smooth roll at a time. You've seen the practical genius of the wheelbarrow effortlessly moving heavy loads. Now let's look up to the sky for an invention that began with a serious, almost somber purpose, only to eventually become a symbol of joy and freedom: the kite. It. Imagine ancient battlefields not just filled with the clang of swords and the thud of siege engines, but also with silent, soaring figures overhead relaying messages or striking fear into enemy hearts. The earliest kites in China were far more than children's toys. They were instruments of war and scientific observation. The origins of the kite in China date back over 2,000 years during the Warring States period, 475–221 BCE, possibly even earlier. Legend attributes the invention to two figures, Mozi and Lu Ban, renowned philosophers and engineers. Mozi is said to have spent 3 years making a wooden bird that could fly, while Lu Ban reportedly created a wooden kite that flew for 3 days. While these might be mythical exaggerations, they highlight the long-standing fascination with flight and the pursuit of aerial innovation. You can almost picture them squinting at the sky, pondering how to make something lighter than air. Early Chinese kites were often constructed from bamboo and silk, or paper materials, that were lightweight and strong thanks to the innovations we've already discussed. Their initial purpose was primarily military. Imagine them as ancient drones used for reconnaissance signaling, or even for psychological warfare. A general might fly a large, intimidating kite over an enemy encampment to demoralize the troops, or use smaller kites to send coded messages over long distances, bypassing enemy lines. One authoritative historical fact is that historical texts like the Hanshu History of Han describe kites being used for military purposes, such as measuring distances over enemy territory, or for signaling during sieges as early as the 2nd century BCE. The story of General Han Xin during the Chu-Han contention 206–202 BCE is a classic example. He reportedly used kites to measure the distance into an enemy city for tunneling or to send distress signals. These weren't just simple toys. They were precise instruments requiring careful design and understanding of aerodynamics. Historians still debate the extent to which kites were truly effective military tools versus being primarily used for psychological effect or basic observation. Were they genuinely strategic assets or just good at scaring people and looking impressive? It's a bit like asking if a really loud car is fast or just loud. As military uses evolved, kites also found applications in meteorological observation, being sent aloft to gauge wind speed and direction, an early form of weather forecasting. But as centuries passed, their utilitarian purposes began to broaden, transforming into forms of recreation and art. Imagine the shift from a grim military commander launching a kite for battle to a joyous festival where kites of all shapes and sizes soared through the air celebrating spring or good fortune. A quirky fact: some ancient Chinese kites were designed to hum or whistle in the wind thanks to attached strings or bamboo pipes, adding an auditory dimension to their aerial presence. So it wasn't just a silent spectacle, it was a symphony in the sky, from strategic military assets to symbols of freedom and festivity. The kite is a soaring testament to ancient Chinese ingenuity, proving that sometimes the simplest ideas can take flight in unexpected ways. You've watched kites dance in the wind, from military spies to festive art. Now let's get back on the water, but this time with an innovative twist on propulsion. Imagine paddling a boat with oars, a slow and arduous process, particularly for large vessels or against strong currents. Then picture a clever mechanism that harnessed human power more efficiently, allowing boats to glide across the water with remarkable speed and grace. This brings us to the invention of paddle wheel boats. In ancient China, a testament to their enduring mastery of hydraulics and mechanics. The earliest forms of water transport were, of course, simple rafts and canoes, propelled by poles or paddles. These were fine for small rivers or calm lakes, but as trade routes expanded and military needs grew, there was a demand for faster, more powerful vessels. The idea of using a wheel with paddles attached rotating to push water backward likely evolved from observing watermills or even children playing with toy wheels in streams. The Chinese, with their long history of elaborate canal systems and naval warfare, were perfectly positioned to capitalize on this concept. While the exact date of the first paddle wheel boat is debated, evidence points to its development during the Southern Dynasty's period, 420 589 CE, with more refined versions appearing during the Tang and Song dynasties. Imagine a large warship not powered by dozens of weary rowers, but by unseen mechanisms turning massive wheels on its sides, churning the water and propelling the vessel forward. This was a significant leap in naval technology. One authoritative historical fact is that the Song dynasty official and engineer Li Gao in 1134 CE designed and built paddle wheel warships known as water wheels, Shui Lun, that were famously effective in battles against Eurasian invaders. These early paddle wheel boats were often powered by treadmills operated by human crews, much like giant hamster wheels. Imagine a team of soldiers or laborers inside the ship steadily treading to turn the paddle wheels outside, creating a surprisingly powerful and consistent propulsion. Some designs even incorporated multiple paddle wheels on the sides, and even at the stern, maximizing thrust. Historians still debate the specific advantages of paddle wheel boats over traditional oar-powered vessels in terms of speed and maneuverability, with some arguing that while powerful, they might have been less agile in certain combat situations. It's like asking whether a bulldozer is always better than a nimble excavator. It depends on the job. The impact of paddle wheel boats was felt in both military and civilian applications. For warfare, they offered greater speed and independence from wind, unlike sails, allowing for surprise attacks and rapid deployment of troops. For civilian use, they could move goods and passengers more efficiently along rivers and canals, further enhancing the economic integration provided by the Grand Canal. A quirky fact: some larger Chinese paddle wheel boats were said to have up to 20 paddle wheels, requiring a massive crew to operate, essentially turning the entire vessel into a floating human-powered engine room. So while it was efficient, it wasn't exactly hands-free. From stealthy warships to bustling cargo vessels, paddle wheel boats showcased ancient China's ingenuity in harnessing mechanical power for aquatic transport, literally revolutionizing how they moved across the water. You've witnessed the churning efficiency of paddle wheel boats propelling vessels with mechanical might. Now let's marvel at something equally impressive but static and profoundly beautiful, the hut bridges of stone and wood that spanned ancient China's rivers and valleys. Imagine a raging river, a deep gorge, or a treacherous marsh presenting an insurmountable barrier to travel and trade. For millennia, crossing such obstacles was dangerous, if not impossible. But Chinese engineers, masters of materials and structure, devised ways to conquer these natural divides, creating elegant and enduring passages that linked communities and facilitated the flow of an empire. The history of bridge building in China is as old as its civilization itself. From simple log bridges to more complex pontoon bridges made of boats, the techniques evolved steadily. But it was their mastery of stone and wood that allowed for the construction of truly monumental and permanent structures. Unlike some Western traditions that relied heavily on the true arch, Chinese bridge builders often favored beam bridges supported by sturdy piers or intricately designed timber structures. Imagine a series of robust stone pillars rising from a river supporting a flat roadway above the swirling currents, simple yet incredibly strong. The key to their success lay in their understanding of joinery and structural integrity. For wooden bridges, they developed sophisticated interlocking joints, avoiding the need for nails or metal fasteners, allowing the wood to flex and move with environmental changes. It's like building with giant, perfectly fitted Legos, only these were designed to withstand centuries of traffic and floods. For stone bridges, they often used meticulously cut and fitted blocks, relying on gravity and precise engineering to create stable structures. One authoritative historical fact is that Chinese engineers were building large-span timber bridges, often utilizing cantilevered designs as early as the Warring States period, showcasing their early prowess in complex wooden construction. These aren't just utilitarian structures. Many Chinese bridges were also works of art adorned with pavilions, carvings, and inscriptions. Imagine crossing a bridge that was not just a pathway, but also a place of contemplation, offering stunning views and a sense of enduring beauty. They became focal points of communities, gathering places and symbols of connection. Historians still debate the extent to which Chinese bridge design influenced or was influenced by bridge building traditions in other parts of the world, particularly along the Silk Road, with some arguing for independent development and others for shared knowledge. It's like asking if all great ideas are born in isolation, or if they sometimes cross borders, finding fertile ground elsewhere. The impact of these bridges on Chinese society was immense. They facilitated trade, allowing goods to flow more smoothly between regions. They enabled faster troop movements, enhancing military control and defense. And crucially, they connected people, fostering cultural exchange and strengthening the cohesion of the empire. A quirky fact: some ancient Chinese bridges were designed to resemble dragons, with their sinuous forms and ornate railings mirroring the mythical beasts, adding a layer of symbolic meaning to their functional purpose. So you weren't just crossing a river, you were walking across the back of a dragon. From the sturdy timber spans to the elegant stone arches, Chinese bridges stand as enduring monuments to ancient engineering genius, proving that sometimes the greatest leaps forward are made by simply connecting two previously separate points. You've traversed the strong stone and wooden bridges of ancient China. Now let's focus on one particular type of bridge that stands as a true marvel of ancient engineering, a design so sophisticated that it would not be replicated in Europe for centuries: the segmented arch bridge. Imagine crossing a river on a bridge that feels remarkably flat, almost like a road, yet spans a wide expanse, without a single towering central arch. This seemingly impossible feat was achieved with elegant simplicity and profound structural understanding. The pinnacle of this design is the Anji Bridge, also known as the Jiaozhou Bridge, built by the master craftsman Li Chun during the Sui dynasty 581–618 CE. This bridge is not just old, It's a structural masterpiece that still stands today, a testament to its brilliant design. Unlike traditional semicircular arches that rise high, making the approach steep and challenging for traffic, the Anji Bridge employs a remarkably shallow segmented arch. This means the arch rises only slightly, creating a much flatter roadway that was easier for carts and people to cross. It's like discovering that instead of climbing a steep hill, you can just walk up a gentle ramp. The true genius of the Zhaozhou Bridge lies in its open spandrel design. Imagine a massive central arch, but instead of solid stone fill above it, there are two smaller arches on each side of the main one. These smaller arches serve multiple purposes. They significantly reduce the overall weight of the bridge, minimizing the load on the main arch and its foundations. They allow floodwaters to pass through, reducing pressure on the structure during heavy rains. And they simply look incredibly elegant, giving the bridge a light, almost ethereal appearance. It's a bit like designing a lightweight, high-performance bicycle instead of a clunky, solid block on wheels. One authoritative historical fact is that the Zhaozhou Bridge, completed around 605 CE, is the world's oldest open spandrel stone arch bridge, showcasing an unparalleled level of engineering sophistication for its time. Its survival through over 400 years, including numerous floods, earthquakes, and wars, speaks volumes about the brilliance of its design and construction. Historians still debate the extent of the theoretical knowledge that underpinned Li Chun's design. Was it purely empirical based on generations of trial and error, or did it draw upon a more advanced, perhaps unrecorded understanding of structural mechanics? It's like wondering if a master chef is following a recipe or instinctively creating a masterpiece. The impact of such bridges was immense. They provided incredibly efficient and durable crossings over major waterways, facilitating trade communication and military movements more smoothly than ever before. They became models for future bridge construction, inspiring engineers for centuries. A quirky fact: local legend says that the Zhaozhou Bridge was so well built that it was completed overnight by a magical, immortal craftsman, a testament to the awe it inspired in people. So while it was built by human hands, it clearly felt like magic to those who saw it. The segmented arch bridge, exemplified by the enduring Zhaozhou Bridge, remains a powerful symbol of ancient Chinese civil engineering, demonstrating how elegant design combined with a deep understanding of materials could conquer nature's obstacles with lasting beauty and strength. You've crossed the elegant, enduring Zhaozhou Bridge. Now let's leave behind the grand feats of engineering and step into a quieter yet profoundly influential realm, the world of the tea cultivation and culture. Imagine a time when water was often unsafe to drink and simple beverages were limited. Then picture the discovery of a leaf that, when steeped, offered not just a safe, refreshing drink, but also a moment of calm, a ritual, and eventually, a global commodity that shaped economies and social customs. The story of tea in China is far more than just a drink. It's a testament to ancient agricultural mastery and a deep-rooted cultural phenomenon. The origins of tea are steeped in legend, with the most famous tale attributing its discovery to the mythical emperor Shen Nung, the divine farmer, around 2737 BCE. He supposedly discovered tea when leaves from a tea bush fell into his boiling water. He drank the infusion and found it refreshing and invigorating. While likely apocryphal, this legend underscores tea's ancient roots in Chinese consciousness. You can almost picture him, a wise ruler, accidentally brewing the world's first cuppa. Archaeological evidence and historical texts confirm that tea cultivation and consumption were well established in China by the Han Dynasty 206 BCE, 220 CE, primarily in the mountainous regions of the southwest. The cultivation of tea plants, Camellia sinensis, required specific agricultural expertise. Farmers had to understand ideal growing conditions, high altitudes, consistent rainfall, and well-drained soil. They developed sophisticated methods for nurturing the bushes, harvesting the leaves at optimal times, and processing them through various stages of drying, rolling, and fermenting to produce different types of tea. It's a bit like vineyard management, but for a beverage that became far more widespread. One authoritative historical fact is that the earliest detailed manual on tea cultivation and preparation, the classic of tea Cha Jing, was written by Lu Yu in the 8th century CE, demonstrating a mature understanding of tea's complexities by the Tang dynasty. Initially, tea was consumed as a medicinal beverage valued for its stimulating and purported health benefits. Imagine a doctor prescribing a cup of tea to soothe ailments. Over centuries, its role expanded. During the Tang dynasty, it became a popular drink, particularly among the literati and Buddhist monks, who found its invigorating properties helpful during long hours of meditation. During the Song dynasty, tea culture flourished with elaborate tea ceremonies and connoisseurship becoming an art form. You can almost hear the gentle clinking of porcelain cups and the quiet conversations unfolding over steaming bowls of whisked tea. Historians still debate the precise moment when tea transitioned from a medicinal herb to a widely consumed daily beverage, with some arguing that its initial bitter taste made it a hard sell for casual consumption until processing techniques improved. It's like wondering when coffee went from a bitter wake-up call to a gourmet experience. A quirky fact during the Tang dynasty, tea was often compressed into bricks or cakes for easy transport and storage, and pieces would be broken off and ground into a powder before whisking with hot water. So your ancestors might have been enjoying ancient instant tea, from its mythical origins to a refined cultural ritual. Tea's journey in China is a testament to the power of a simple leaf to inspire agriculture art and a profound connection among people. You've sipped the calming, culturally rich beverage of tea. Now let's explore another profoundly Chinese realm, one that addresses the intricate workings of the human body and mind. Acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine, TCM. Imagine a world where the understanding of disease was often based on superstition or limited observation. Then picture a system of healing that looked at the body as an interconnected web of energy seeking balance and harmony to restore health. Ancient China developed a comprehensive medical philosophy and a set of practices that continue to influence global health today. The roots of traditional Chinese medicine stretch back thousands of years, evolving from empirical observations, philosophical insights, and careful documentation. While specific origins are often lost to time or attributed to mythical figures like the Yellow Emperor, whose Huangdi Neijing, or the Yellow Emperor's Inner Canon, is considered a foundational text, archaeological evidence suggests early forms of medical practice, including the use of medicinal herbs and rudimentary needles, were present in China as far back as the Neolithic period. You can almost see ancient shamans or healers meticulously observing the effects of plants on various ailments. Acupuncture, perhaps the most recognizable component of TCM in the West, is based on the concept of qi, pronounced qi, life energy, flowing through specific pathways in the body called meridians. When qi flow is disrupted or blocked, illness can result. Acupuncture involves inserting fine needles into specific points along these meridians to restore the balance of qi and promote healing. Imagine a subtle energy map within your body, and these needles acting like tiny conductors rerouting traffic. One authoritative historical fact is that the earliest clear evidence of acupuncture needles, made of bone and stone, dates back to around 3000 BCE in China, indicating a very long tradition of this specific practice. Beyond acupuncture, TCM encompasses a vast array of practices, including herbal medicine, dietary therapy, tuina, massage, cupping, and exercises like qigong and tai chi. The holistic approach of TCM aims to treat the whole person, not just the symptoms of a disease, by identifying underlying imbalances. It's a bit like a detective trying to find the root cause of a problem rather than just patching over the immediate issue. Historians still debate the precise relationship between ancient philosophical concepts like yin and yang and the practical development of TCM techniques. Was the philosophy born from observations or did it guide the observations? It's a classic chicken and egg scenario for intellectual history. The meticulous documentation of symptoms, herbal remedies, and treatment outcomes across centuries formed a vast body of medical knowledge. Imagine generations of healers passing down their wisdom, refining techniques based on countless patient experiences. A quirky fact: some early acupuncture charts depicted humans with the internal organs clearly visible, but these were often based on theoretical models rather than precise anatomical dissection, as dissection was considered taboo for much of Chinese history. So it was more about energy pathways than perfect internal maps. From the subtle prick of a needle to the complex synergy of herbal concoctions, traditional Chinese medicine represents a profound and enduring quest to understand the mysteries of the human body and harness natural forces for healing, a legacy that continues to resonate across the globe. You've explored the intricate world of traditional Chinese medicine, focusing on the unseen energies of the human body. Now let's turn our gaze upwards to the grandest canvas of all, the night sky. Imagine a world where the movements of celestial bodies were mysterious, even divine. Then picture a civilization meticulously tracking stars, planets, and eclipses, not just for spiritual insight, but for practical purposes like timekeeping, navigation, and predicting seasons. Ancient China developed sophisticated astronomical observatories and instruments revealing a profound and enduring fascination with the cosmos. Chinese astronomy has one of the longest continuous traditions in the world, stretching back millennia. From very early on, astronomical observations were intimately linked to imperial authority. The emperor was considered the son of heaven, and maintaining a correct calendar and understanding celestial phenomena were crucial for legitimizing his rule. Failed predictions or ignored omens could spell disaster both politically and agriculturally. So observing the sky wasn't just a hobby, it was a matter of state security. You can almost see ancient astronomers bundled against the night chill, meticulously charting the heavens. Early observatories were often simple platforms or towers, allowing for an unobstructed view of the night sky. But over centuries, they evolved into impressive complexes equipped with increasingly sophisticated instruments. The artillery sphere is a prime example. While versions of this instrument existed elsewhere, Chinese astronomers developed incredibly intricate and accurate ones. Imagine a complex skeletal globe of rings representing celestial coordinates, with rotating parts that mimicked the movements of stars and planets. These were often powered by complex water-driven mechanisms, making them essentially ancient planetariums. One authoritative historical fact is that Zhang Heng, the same polymath who invented the seismoscope, remember him from part 14, created a sophisticated water-powered artillery sphere in the 2nd century CE, capable of depicting astronomical phenomena with remarkable precision. Beyond artillery spheres, Chinese observatories housed gnomons for measuring shadows to determine solstices, and equinoxes, sighting tubes for precise angular measurements, and later elaborate bronze instruments used to pinpoint stellar positions. They kept meticulous records of supernovae, which they called guest stars, comets, and solar and lunar eclipses. These records are invaluable to modern astronomers studying historical celestial events. Historians still debate the extent to which ancient Chinese astronomical calculations were driven purely by scientific curiosity versus being primarily motivated by astrological and political concerns. Was it pure science or mostly about reading cosmic tea leaves? Likely it was a blend of both. The impact of these astronomical observations was profound. Accurate calendars were crucial for agriculture, dictating planting and harvesting seasons. Celestial navigation aided maritime voyages, recall the compass from Part 9. And the accumulation of centuries of detailed data laid the groundwork for future scientific understanding. A quirky fact: ancient Chinese astronomers also documented sunspots, large dark areas on the sun's surface, centuries before they were observed in Europe, often interpreting them as bad omens or blemishes on the solar disk. So they weren't just looking at the stars, they were peering into the very heart of their sun, from the intricate mechanisms of the armillary sphere to the painstaking records of celestial events. Ancient Chinese astronomy illuminates a civilization deeply connected to the cosmos, seeking to understand its rhythms and harness its knowledge for earthly benefit. You've explored the grand scale of ancient Chinese astronomy, charting the movements of distant stars. Now let's bring our focus down to a more intimate yet equally profound measurement: time. Imagine a world where the passage of hours was marked only by the shifting sun or the dripping of water clocks, inherently inaccurate and easily disrupted. Then picture the development of intricate, mechanical clocks, devices that could track time with unprecedented precision, heralding a new era of organization and scientific inquiry. Ancient China, surprisingly to many in the West, was a pioneer in sophisticated horology. The earliest forms of timekeeping in China, like in many ancient civilizations, relied on natural phenomena. Sundials measured the sun's shadow and clepsydras. Water clocks used the steady drip of water. While ingenious, these had their limitations. Sundials were useless at night or on cloudy days, and water clocks could freeze in winter or become inaccurate with changes in temperature and water pressure. The search for a more reliable, consistent timekeeper was paramount, especially for astronomical observations and imperial scheduling. You can almost feel the frustration of an ancient astronomer whose water clock just froze solid. The true breakthrough came during the Tang Dynasty 618–907 CE, with the invention of escapement mechanisms, the crucial component that regulates the release of energy in a clock, allowing for a steady ticking motion. This was a monumental leap from the continuous flow of water clocks. The most famous example of early Chinese mechanical clocks is the monumental astronomical clock tower built by the engineer and statesman Su Song in Kaifeng in 1088 CE during the Song dynasty. Imagine a towering structure some 40 feet tall, powered by a massive water wheel, its complex internal gears not only telling the time, but also moving astronomical models of the heavens. It was less a clock and more an ancient interactive observatory. Susung's clock tower utilized an escapement mechanism that was remarkably similar in principle to those later used in medieval European mechanical clocks, but developed entirely independently. This allowed for the precise step-by-step movement of the clockwork. One authoritative historical fact is that Susong's clock tower, meticulously described in his treatise, Xin Yi Xiang Fa Yao New Design for an Armillary and Celestial Sphere, included a water-powered escapement mechanism and automatically rotating astronomical instruments, showcasing a pinnacle of complex ancient Chinese engineering. Historians still debate the extent of direct influence between Chinese and European mechanical clock development. While the principles were similar, the independent invention suggests parallel paths of innovation. It's like two different people inventing the wheel, but on different continents. Sometimes great ideas emerge in multiple places. The purpose of these clocks was not just to tell the time for the common person. They were grand instruments of imperial power and scientific inquiry, used for accurate astronomical observations, astrological predictions, and organizing the daily rituals of the court. A quirky fact: some early Chinese mechanical clocks had automated figures that would emerge from doors to strike bells or gongs at set intervals, making them not just timekeepers, but also ancient automatons, adding a touch of theatrical flair to the passage of time. So it wasn't just a quiet tick-tock. It was a performance. From the majestic clock towers of imperial China to the ticking gears of more portable devices, these mechanical marvels proved ancient China's mastery over the most elusive of concepts, time itself shaping the rhythm of an empire and paving the way for future horological wonders. You've explored the intricate gears and grand scale of ancient Chinese mechanical clocks devices that tamed time itself. Now let's shift our focus to an equally pervasive, though less visually dramatic invention that revolutionized calculation and commerce, the abacus. Imagine a world where every addition, subtraction, or complex financial transaction had to be done in your head on a dirt floor with pebbles or with cumbersome counting rods. Then picture a simple, elegant frame of beads that allowed for rapid, precise calculations accessible to anyone who learned its method. This is the enduring legacy of the Chinese abacus, a computing tool that remained indispensable for millennia. The origins of counting boards and rods are ancient and global, but the specific form of the abacus we commonly associate with China, featuring beads divided into upper and lower decks, emerged during the Ming Dynasty 1368–1644 CE, though earlier versions existed during the Song and Yuan dynasties. This design, often called the swanpan, literally calculating tray, proved incredibly efficient. Imagine a rectangular frame with a central crossbar dividing columns of beads. Typically, two beads are in the upper deck, representing 5 units each, and 5 beads in the lower deck representing 1 unit each. This 2-5 configuration allowed for decimal calculations, as well as calculations involving weights and measures. It's like having a miniature manual calculator that never runs out of batteries. The beauty of the abacus lies in its tactile nature and the speed with which skilled operators can perform complex arithmetic. Each column represents a place value units, tens, hundreds, and so on. Calculations are performed by sliding beads towards or away from the crossbar. It takes practice, but once mastered, a trained abacus user can often outpace someone using an electronic calculator for certain operations. You can almost hear the rhythmic click-clack of the beads as an ancient merchant quickly tallies up a transaction. One authoritative historical fact is that the abacus was widely adopted across China by the Ming Dynasty, becoming an indispensable tool for merchants, accountants, and scholars, as evidenced by numerous texts and illustrations from the period. The abacus wasn't just a tool for math. It was a cornerstone of ancient Chinese commerce and administration. It allowed for meticulous record-keeping, efficient taxation, and complex financial transactions, facilitating the smooth operation of a vast economy. Historians still debate the precise historical lineage and influence between different forms of counting boards globally, with some arguing for independent development of similar tools across various cultures, while acknowledging the abacus's unique refinement in China. It's like asking if all cultures independently invented counting on their fingers, or if the idea spread. A quirky fact: in some parts of China, abacus competitions are still held, where highly skilled operators showcase their incredible speed and accuracy, often with blindfolds on. Imagine performing lightning-fast mental math while manipulating beads you can't even see. This demonstrates the deep connection between the physical manipulation of the abacus and the mental calculation process. From the bustling marketplaces to the quiet chambers of imperial accountants, the abacus remained a powerful testament to ancient Chinese ingenuity in simplification and efficiency, a manual computing device that shaped economic life for centuries and still has enthusiasts today. You've clicked and clacked your way through calculations with the abacus. Now let's transition from the purely practical to something that brightened homes and served as an early canvas for artistic expression. Wallpaper. Imagine drab, plain walls, perhaps just bare plaster or rough wood. Then picture a way to instantly transform a space, adding color pattern and even narrative to interior design. While often associated with European sensibilities, The surprising truth is that the origins of wallpaper as we understand it can be traced back to ancient China. Before wallpaper, people adorned walls with painted murals, tapestries, or simply left them bare. These methods were either incredibly labor-intensive and costly murals or heavy and limited in design tapestries. The Chinese, with their mastery of paper production, remember Kailun from Part 2, and woodblock printing recall, the Diamond Sutra from Part 5, had all the essential ingredients for a revolution in interior decoration. It was a logical next step to apply the art of printing onto large sheets of paper designed for walls. The earliest forms of wallpaper in China appeared during the Tang Dynasty 618–907 CE, though its widespread use became more prominent during the Song Dynasty 960–1279 CE. Imagine a wealthy scholar or a discerning emperor desiring to cover their walls not with costly silk tapestries, but with durable, beautifully printed paper. These early wallpapers weren't patterned rolls like today. They were often large sheets printed with intricate designs, landscapes, floral motifs, or even calligraphic texts. They would then be pasted onto walls, creating continuous scenes or repeating patterns. It's a bit like having a giant personalized art print that covers an entire room. One authoritative historical fact is that paper, the fundamental material for wallpaper, was invented in China, and woodblock printing, the method for applying patterns, was also a Chinese innovation. The combination of these two technologies directly led to the earliest forms of decorative wall coverings. Historians still debate the precise functional purpose of early Chinese wallpaper. Was it primarily for insulation decoration or to cover imperfections in wall construction? It's like asking if your new coat is for warmth, fashion, or hiding a stain. Sometimes it's all three. The refinement of printing techniques, including the use of multiple blocks for different colors, allowed for increasingly sophisticated and vibrant designs. As Chinese paper-making secrets spread westward, remember the captured papermakers at Talas from Part 3, so too did the potential for paper-based wall coverings. While European wallpaper would later develop its own distinct styles and manufacturing methods, the fundamental concept of printed paper as a decorative wall covering originated in China. A quirky fact: some early Chinese wallpapers were even scented with fragrant herbs or spices incorporated into the paper pulp, or adhesives, adding an olfactory dimension to the visual experience. So it wasn't just a feast for the eyes, it was a treat for the nose too. From brightening ancient homes to becoming a global decorative staple, wallpaper is another quiet testament to Chinese ingenuity, showing how the combination of existing inventions can lead to entirely new possibilities. You've admired the decorative patterns of ancient Chinese wallpaper. Now let's pivot from static design to dynamic entertainment, exploring an invention that has brought joy, strategy, and a touch of mischief to countless people across the globe. Playing cards. Imagine a world where communal games were limited to dice, board games, or physical contests. Then picture the arrival of a simple deck of cards offering endless possibilities for chance, skill, and social interaction, instantly transforming leisure time. And perhaps surprisingly, the very first playing cards emerged from the vibrant culture of ancient China. The exact origins of playing cards are somewhat murky, evolving from earlier forms of paper money or domino-like games. However, scholarly consensus points to their invention in China during the Tang Dynasty 618–907 CE, or certainly by the Song Dynasty 960–1279 CE. This makes perfect sense when you remember China's earlier innovations: paper, which provided the ideal medium, and woodblock printing, which allowed for the mass production of identical card designs. Without these two predecessors, playing cards as we know them simply wouldn't have been possible. It's like trying to play poker with rocks. Not very practical. Early Chinese playing cards were often referred to as leaf games, yazi, or money cards, reflecting their initial connection to currency. Imagine playing a game where the cards themselves represented different denominations of money, making the stakes very real. These early decks typically had suits corresponding to denominations of coins, strings of coins, or even sets of thousands of coins, and often featured illustrations of characters or symbols. One authoritative historical fact is that the earliest undisputed reference to playing cards is found in the 9th century text Collection of Miscellanea at Xuanming by Su Yi, which describes Princess Tongchang playing a leaf game with members of the Tang imperial family. The games played with these early cards were likely quite different from modern poker or bridge. They involved elements of chance strategy and often gambling. Imagine lively gatherings in ancient tea houses or imperial courts, filled with laughter exclamations and the shuffling sound of these unique paper cards. Historians still debate whether Chinese playing cards evolved directly from games using paper currency, or if they were an independent invention that simply borrowed the visual style of currency. Was it an adaptation or a fresh idea? The lines can get a bit blurry in the mists of history. As Chinese playing cards traveled westward along trade routes, they evolved, adapting to different cultures and developing new suits and gameplays. The Mamluk Sultanate in Egypt, for instance, had decks with suits of cups, coins, swords, and polo sticks, clearly influenced by their own culture but built upon the Chinese foundation. A quirky fact: some early Chinese playing card games involved drinking penalties for losing, ensuring that even a bad hand could lead to a good time or a very blurry one. So the concept of social drinking games dates back a long, long way, from simple money cards to the sophisticated decks we use today. Playing cards are a testament to ancient China's knack for turning everyday materials into engines of entertainment, proving that even a small piece of printed paper can bring immense joy and strategic challenge to millions. You've gambled and strategized with ancient Chinese playing cards. Now let's get personal, very personal, and explore an invention that quietly revolutionized daily hygiene: the toothbrush. Imagine a world where dental care was rudimentary at best, relying on twigs, rough cloths, or just rinsing. Then picture a simple tool with bristles designed to clean teeth, bringing a new level of oral hygiene and comfort. Surprisingly, the modern bristle toothbrush, an item you probably used just this morning, has its roots firmly planted in ancient China. For most of human history, dental care was a bit rustic. Ancient Egyptians used frayed stick ends, Romans had toothpicks, and various cultures employed abrasive powders or herbal rinses. While these offered some cleaning, they lacked the efficacy of bristles. The breakthrough came in China, likely during the Tang Dynasty 618–907 CE, though its widespread use solidified during the Ming Dynasty 1368–1644 CE. Imagine the collective sigh of relief as people discovered a more effective way to combat bad breath and gum disease. You can almost hear the gentle scrubbing sounds as someone diligently cleaned their teeth. The Chinese bristle toothbrush was typically made from animal bone or bamboo, for the handle with bristles harvested from the stiff, coarse hairs of Siberian hogs or other animals inserted and glued into drilled holes. This design with a handle and perpendicular bristles is remarkably similar to the toothbrushes we use today. It wasn't just a random stick. It was a thoughtfully engineered tool for oral health. One authoritative historical fact is that historical records and archaeological finds from the Ming Dynasty provide clear evidence of the widespread use of bristle toothbrushes in China, predating European adoption of similar tools by several centuries. The invention of the toothbrush reflected a growing awareness of personal hygiene and health in ancient Chinese society. While not everyone had access to them, particularly in earlier periods, their existence points to a sophisticated understanding of well-being. Imagine the fresh feeling of a clean mouth, a sensation that would have been a luxury for many of their global contemporaries. Historians still debate the precise impetus for the invention of the bristle toothbrush. Was it a natural evolution from existing oral hygiene practices, or a specific innovation driven by increasing sophistication in material manipulation. It's like wondering if soap was invented for cleanliness or because someone dropped fat in a campfire by accident. As with many Chinese inventions, the toothbrush slowly made its way westward through trade and cultural exchange, eventually reaching Europe in the 17th century. Even then, it remained a luxury item for the wealthy for quite some time, while many still relied on less effective methods. A quirky fact, some early Chinese toothbrushes had handles elaborately carved with decorative motifs, turning a utilitarian object into a small work of art. So your ancestors might have been brushing their teeth with a brush that looked like a tiny ornate sculpture. From the humble hog bristle to the sleek plastic designs of today, the toothbrush is a quiet yet profoundly impactful testament to ancient Chinese innovation, proving that even the most intimate aspects of daily life were touched by their genius. You've cleaned your ancient teeth with the bristle toothbrush. Now let's bring light to another seemingly simple yet transformative invention that allowed humanity to conjure fire on demand: the matches. Imagine a world where starting a fire was a laborious, often dangerous process, requiring friction sparks and readily available tinder. Then picture a small, convenient stick that with a simple strike could ignite, instantly providing warmth, light, and the means to cook. While modern matches are a complex chemical feat, their primitive beginnings, often overlooked, are rooted in ancient China. For millennia, humans relied on flint and steel fire drills or maintaining existing embers to generate fire. These methods were cumbersome and unreliable, especially in adverse weather conditions. The demand for a quicker, more portable way to ignite flame was constant, particularly for lighting lamps or starting cooking fires. The Chinese, with their deep understanding of various chemicals, remember the alchemists from Part 10, found an ingenious solution long before the matchbox became a staple in every home. The earliest form of friction match was developed in China during the Five Dynasties and Ten Kingdoms period, 907–960 CE, following the collapse of the Tang dynasty. These were known as fire-holding slaves, or fire-inch sticks. They weren't quite the striking matches we know today, but they were a revolutionary step. Imagine small pine sticks impregnated with sulfur. When the tip of one of these sticks was touched to a spark, perhaps from a flint, it would instantly burst into flame, providing a reliable ignition source for tinder. This was a massive improvement over trying to coax a flame from raw materials with sparks alone. One authoritative historical fact is that the first detailed description of fire-inch sticks comes from the book Records of the Unworldly and the Strange Chui Keng Lu, written in 950 CE by Taogu, explicitly mentioning their use for starting fires quickly. These early matches were crucial for daily life, allowing for immediate access to fire without the arduous process of prolonged friction. Imagine a busy market stall holder easily lighting a lamp at dusk, or a traveler quickly starting a small fire for warmth. Historians still debate the extent of the chemical knowledge behind these early matches. Was it a deliberate application of chemical principles for ignition, or a fortunate discovery of sulfur's ignitable properties when combined with a small spark? It's like asking if someone invented popcorn because they understood thermodynamics, or just because a kernel jumped out of the fire. The production of these matches would have been simple but effective, involving dipping wood splints into molten sulfur. While they still required a primary spark, they greatly simplified the next step, getting a sustained flame. A quirky fact: these fire-inch sticks were so valuable that they were even sold in small packets by street vendors in ancient Chinese cities, demonstrating their commercial importance and widespread adoption. So you might have bought ancient matchbooks alongside your tea and paper. From simple sulfur-tipped splints to the sophisticated safety matches of today, this ancient Chinese invention quietly lit the way for countless innovations, proving that even the smallest spark of ingenuity can illuminate vast possibilities. You've struck the ancient match, kindling the last flame of our journey through ancient Chinese ingenuity. We've traversed centuries from the delicate art of papermaking to the thunderous might of gunpowder, from the serene discipline of tea to the surprising practicality of the toothbrush. Now let's take a moment to reflect on the overall impact of these Chinese inventions on the world. Imagine a world without paper, without the compass, or without the very concept of printing. It would be a vastly different, far less connected, and less knowledgeable place, wouldn't it? The ripples of Chinese innovation spread far beyond its borders, shaping civilizations, fueling trade, and laying fundamental groundwork for scientific and cultural revolutions across the globe. Think back to what is paper. Parts, Tor 1, 2, 3. Without it, the widespread dissemination of knowledge would have been unimaginable. European Renaissance, the Protestant Reformation, the Scientific Revolution, all profoundly reliant on the availability of cheap, mass-produced paper. It wasn't just about printing books. It was about record-keeping legal documents, personal letters, and eventually, the humble newspaper. Printing mar itself, both woodblock Part 4-5 and movable type Part 6, further democratized knowledge, breaking the monopoly of scribes and making information accessible to a broader population, driving literacy and intellectual exchange globally. Imagine the sheer explosion of ideas that occurred when books became widely available, all thanks to Chinese groundwork. The Kate Compass, Part 9, fundamentally reshaped exploration and navigation. It allowed mariners to venture further from coastlines, opening up new trade routes and facilitating the age of discovery for European explorers centuries later. Without a reliable way to find direction at sea, transoceanic voyages would have remained perilous gambles. Gunpowder. Part 10. 11 irrevocably altered warfare, first in Asia, then spreading to the Middle East and Europe, leading to the development of cannons and firearms. This single invention changed the balance of power, influenced military strategies, and eventually even shaped political landscapes worldwide. It also gave us fireworks, bringing joy to countless celebrations. Beyond these four great inventions, consider the profound yet often unacknowledged influence of others. Silk. Part 12 established the first major east-west trade route, the Silk Road, leading to immense cultural exchange and economic prosperity. Porcelain. Part 7 became a coveted luxury item, globally sparking a craze in Europe and inspiring Western ceramic industries. Agricultural tools. Part 16, like the moldboard plow, dramatically increased food production, influencing farming practices wherever they spread. The wheelbarrow. Part 18 eased labor and facilitated construction and commerce, even the simple toothbrush. Part 30 quietly elevated personal hygiene on a global scale. Historians still debate the precise mechanisms and speed of transfer for many of these technologies, often discussing whether they diffused organically through trade and conquest, or were independently reinvented in different parts of the world. It's like trying to untangle a very old, very complex global supply chain where ideas were the most valuable cargo. The consistent theme, however, is that ancient China was a continuous wellspring of innovation, often developing key technologies centuries before the West. A quirky fact: the concept of standardized competitive civil service exams, vital for meritocracy in many modern governments, also originated in China, dating back to the Han Dynasty. So it wasn't just about inventions, it was about systems too. From the daily routines of personal hygiene to the grand voyages of exploration, and from the quiet pursuit of knowledge to the thunder of battle, the ingenuity of ancient China truly touched every facet of human existence, shaping the world we know in countless profound ways. Now, as the echoes of ancient ingenuity fade and the final whispers of our historical journey settle, let your mind drift from the vast rivers and grand inventions to the quiet hum of your own room. The echoes of 1,000 years of innovation softly recede, blurring into the comfort of your surroundings. Allow the weight of history, both grand and small, to gently ease your thoughts. The great wheel of progress propelled by these quiet discoveries continues to turn long after the ancient craftsmen have laid down their tools. Just as the stars continue their silent journey across the velvet sky, so too does the legacy of human brilliance continue its gentle, enduring glow. Good night.